Hello everyone. In this video we are going to learn how to make header files for our Qt project. So if we go ahead and see our Qt project file, here you will find that we have a lot of header files. As you can see here, we have a window.h and page.h, and then we have files main window.cpp. We have a file main window.h and main window.cpp. Similarly, we have page.h and page home.cpp. So what are these header files and why we need to define them separately? So basically, the header files are defined with .h or .hpp extensions and are used to declare the structure of your classes, functions, and constants. So we define the structure, that how our class is going to look, and the function or the variables, member functions or variables that is going to contain in our header file. We do this for the better organization, reusability, maintainability, and faster compilation time. So the header file is actually compiled only once, and compiler does, if we make any changes in our main file.cpp file, it does not need to compile our header file again and again. So it is also included only once in our build. Okay, so let's just go ahead. At first I will make a folder right here. Just name it first first test.cpp. So let's just at first see the very basic. So whenever we write a C++ program, I'm sorry, first thing we do is we do include IO stream. We all know this is included for the input and output streams that we are going to create while our program is running. And we write using namespace st. So this line signifies that we are going to use the standard namespace. And when we define a class here, what we do is class, let's just take demo and make a private function. Let's just say our private function is returning a string, and it is basically giving us data. So give data, and it is going to return hello Qt. And if we go ahead and make a public function as well, let's just say void show data, and we print out here cout. We call that function right here, give data function. So let's just say this is our basic class definition, where we have a private function, a public function, and we can have a data member also here, but we have not defined any data member here. So if we want to actually use this class, what we will do is we will make a int main, and here we will create an object first. It will be demo obj, and from this object we can call that function. So which function are we going to call here? We are going to call public functions. J dot show data. I'm sorry, it's a function. So right here, if we call that function, okay, so we made a mistake here. It was a function, right? So if we call it, so it is printing the result, which is this string. So this is the basic definition. But there is another method. We can also define this function outside of the class definition. How do we do that? Actually use scope resolution operator in that. So if I just take it, copy, paste it outside the class, and right here I will remove its definition. Actually I'm just prototyping it inside there. I take both of the function outside of the class. So but here we have to use a scope resolution operator. Here we have to say that it belongs to the demo class. So we'll add demo and use the scope resolution operator. Similarly here, operator. Oh, I'm so sorry, not here. It will be first we'll have the return type and then demo. So this is how we define a function outside of the class definition. So we say here we use the scope resolution operator and we give the class name. That we actually tell the compiler that this function belongs to this class and this is the definition for that function. So if I go ahead and call this function, there is no error. So this is very basic. This is how we define a function outside of the class, and this is basically how a class is defined. But here, if I comment out standard namespace library, standard namespace, so we are going to see that here we are having some errors. It is saying that cout is an unidentified. So how can we resolve it? We can write here std and use namespace. Sorry, and use scope resolution operator. And for the string, we are going to do is include string, and then here we can do std again. So actually, why I did this is I'm going to run it. It will work perfectly fine, but we can also include string here if we will perform other operations. Huh. So why I did this is because we actually when we will make a header file, we actually avoid using namespaces. That is why I removed namespace from here so that I can also show it to you guys that it can be also done in this way. So we should move on to make an header file. Let's just say now this is the basic definition, but as by the definition of header file we saw that we declare the structure of class and functions in the header file, but here we actually also declared actually here we defined these things. We also declared the class. This is the declaration of the class. We declared the class, but as well as we also defined those functions in the same file. But in the header file we will only have this class declared and we will not have these all codes there. These will be defined in the cpp file. So let's just say first test.h. So this is a header file. For defining a header file we use hatch. So this is if and def, which means if not defined basically, and we will also do and if. So here we will provide a name which will be first test h. So what it is going to do is it is going to read this function. When its compiler is going to define this, it will read that if not defined, which first dot for this file. If it is not defined, then define it. Define. And here we will actually write that structure of the class. So what was our class? Our class was class demo, and we had two functions. One was private function, which was string string give data. Another was public void so data. So it is an error right here because we have not included or used include string. We can do std. So this is how we define a header file. So if we go ahead and we use this header file, if I go back here in this first.cpp and I remove from here all this code, and I just write here h include. So it's a name of the file, so we will not use the angular brackets. Include file first test.h. So what we did here is this. This is the how we defined a header file, and it includes the structure of the class, that this class is going to have this function or these data members. And in the .cpp file we included that header file, and we gave the definition of all those functions. If I go ahead and run this, it says not to use a terminator. We do not use a terminator right there. That was my mistake. So you see there is no error. So actually if you see also here in first test.h header file, we have included string right here. So in cpp file we do not need to include this. So if I go ahead and if I also remove this and include it right here, include io string, you will see there is no error, and the header file is included only once. It will not be included more than once. For that we wrote this line. And there is another method to do this, and that is we can remove this and if we can remove this also, and we can just write here h your agma onc once. So these are actually two ways to make a header file. We can use this pragma pragma once, or we can use those include guards. So header files are included only once in the build. We do not write any logic for the program in the header file. It contains the basic structure of the classes and functions in the header files, and it is done for organization, reusability, maintainability, and the faster compilation time. And it also gives a clean separation for our code, which also helps us in development and debugging. So here for pragma once, if we write pragma, which pragma once, it is actually simple and modern. This is the modern method, which are actually supported by most modern compilers. But if we want to use include guards like if hatch if and if define and then and if, we can also use that, which is actually supported by many traditional system. So if we want our code to have to have to be supported by traditional or the old systems, old compilers. We can use this include guard, but for newer systems we are fine, completely fine using the pragma ones. So this is basically how we define a header file. If I go ahead and show you in my project, if you see the main.h, what you are seeing here is just the definition. You can see that we have defined those functions, sorry, not defined, we have given the name of those functions and everything. This includes the actually structure of the class. It doesn't have the code. The main window.cpp has the codes. So yeah, this was about the header file. This is why we make header files and how we make header files.